Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. My name is Juan Londoño, for those of you that have not been here before. And today we're going to tackle the topic of the dilemma of having great gear. Now many people are going to look at this title and say, wait a minute Juan, hang on a minute. The dilemma of having great gear? Does that even make sense? Is that even a topic? Well, I thought that we were all striving to have better gear, right? We all put money away, we save. We're going to look at some of the equipment I have here in front of me, and that's a prime example, right? But if you look at highly creative people, they seem to benefit more from having rudimentary tools, right? Like brushes, pencils, and right? The minute they get on a computer and they start using a computer to draw, it has a lot more flexibility. You can do a lot more with it, but then they feel that because you have all that stuff, now you're counting on that stuff instead of counting on your creativity. I have a saying that I've used in my photography class when I teach it here at the house. And I don't have an online class yet, I'm working on that. But when I teach it here at the house, I have this line, I tell people, the more your gear is able to do for you, the less you will expect of yourself. Take something as simple as a remote control, and I should have bought one because we all have a remote control for our TV, for our stereo systems, for our DVD players, whatever we still have, right? Back in the day, when I was a kid, depending on where you lived in the country or in the world, you had 1 or 2 channels. You may have had 11, 7, 13, not much more than that, right? And if you wanted to sit and you wanted to watch TV for 3 or 4 hours because you didn't feel like doing anything else, you had to constantly get up to switch the channels, right? To change the channel. And so something that's simple, like, you know, sitting down and watching TV, you still have to exercise. You had to get up every 5 minutes if you didn't like what was on, and you had to move it, right? If the news wasn't thrilling you, you had to switch it back to another channel. So today, we take a lot of that for granted. We have a remote control, we click, 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 click. We don't have to move, right? It has limited us a great deal, even though it has a lot more flexibility. You see where I'm coming from, right? But the truth is, we're not all the same, right? So while some photographers consider it a blessing to have amazing gear, other photographers will consider it a crutch. And this can be true for any field that you are coming from, right? Whether it's makeup, video, some other sports, right? The fancier your gear is, the easier your job becomes, the less you have to do. So why such diverse opinions over what seems to be such a clear subject? Let's take something as simple as a prime lens and a zoom lens, okay? This is for my Canon M6 Mark II. It's a crop sensor camera, it's a mirrorless camera, so it's a small little camera. I use it for my street photography. Here's the camera with a slightly bigger lens, but it's a very small little camera, right? And this is a manual focus lens, but these are automatic, okay? So let's look at this, right? The zoom lens tends to be a little more versatile and flexible than a prime lens, right? This tends to have a lot more features than this little guy. Some photographers love the flexibility of this zoom lens, while other photographers are going to tell you that it limits their creativity. Now I want to divert for a second because typically, right, and in this world, these are not the highest resolution lenses, they're not the most expensive lenses, right? It's a street photography camera for a reason, right? So things are affordable and it's a quick little camera. I throw it around and I go everywhere with it. The cool thing about these little lenses, this is about a $350 lens. Maybe it was $400 at its time. This is about $250. So primes tend to be a little lighter, smaller, and cheaper, right? Because there's less glass. Although this is a lot sharper than this, right? Because it's a prime and because it's just a metal lens. This has a metal mount, while this has a plastic mount. And I have caps on right now so you can't see that. I can show you. So this little guy, for 250 bucks, is an amazing little lens. It's one of the best lenses for this camera, probably the best. It's a 22mm f2, okay? It acts as a 35mm on a crop. And this guy's a plastic mount, right? Not as sharp as the other one, right? But anyway, still holds true, right? So we say prime lenses tend to be a little cheaper, smaller, right? And less flexible. This has a lot more flexibility, gives us a lot more options. But I'm telling you this for a reason, because it's not always true. Let's look at this, for example. Back to the prime. I'm going to keep my prime in my right hand, just like I did before. And I'm going to keep the zoom in my left hand, right? Here's the prime. This is for my Canon GFX system. It's a large format mirrorless camera, okay? 100 megapixel. This has a cap on, but look at the size of this thing, right? This is a huge lens because it has a huge sensor, right? So the diameter of this thing is pathetic. This is a prime lens. This is a prime lens. This is the zoom lens. The zoom lens is actually smaller. You can't see it here probably, but it's a little smaller and it's a little lighter than the prime, right? The prime lens is $3,000 in this case. The zoom lens is about $2,500, so it's $500 cheaper. It is more flexible, but it's not cheaper and it's not lighter. I mean, this is more flexible, but it's also cheaper and lighter, and that's not usually the case for zooms. They're more expensive and they're heavier. This thing is a beast. This is a lot heavier. It's a prime. It's a lot more expensive, but you're still limited by one particular focal length. This has a variable focal length, right? The reason I'm telling you this, not to brag about money, it took me a long time to buy these, right? I didn't just flip out the card and buy them. I saved a lot of time and money. I'm telling you because we have this thing in our head that primes are cheap, they're small. Not always, right? Not always. So keep that in mind in the conversation we're about to have. Just because something can limit our creativity doesn't mean that it has to. Let me say it again because it's very important. Just because something can limit our creativity doesn't mean it has to. So what do photographers mean when they say this zoom lens is going to limit my creativity, this little prime lets me be a little more creative? Well, if I put this prime on my camera, that's all I have. And if I take this on a walk along a city or a beach, this is it. This is all I have, right? It's the equivalent of a 35 millimeter. So I'm going to get what I can get. If I need something closer, I'm going to have to walk up to it, or I'm going to have to crop it in post, right? Some cameras have in-camera cropping. So I'm very limited, which piques my creativity, because now I'm going to have to find something else because I don't have the cool lens. I'm going to find something else that makes these pictures interesting. So it's going to have to be composition. My metering has to be spot on. My shadows, everything, right? Everything has to be spot on because this doesn't do it for me. This is very simple, right? However, if I bring this guy, right? Say this was a 24 millimeter equivalent and this was a 24 to 70, just as an example. Well, now I have a 24 to 70. I don't have to do all that walking like the TV, right? You don't have to stand up anymore. I can just zoom in, zoom out, and see? I'll put it over here so you can see it, right? So I don't have to zoom in and walk in and walk out anymore. I don't have to crop and post. I can do everything in this little lens, right? So it limits the creativity because now you sit back and you let the lenses do everything, right? Same with the camera. The camera's full of features. You let the camera take care of a lot of stuff. You stop being creative. That's what people are saying anyway. But what I'm saying is just because this is so full of features doesn't mean it has to limit your creativity. For example, if this was a 24 millimeter and this was a 24 to 70, I can keep this on 24 the whole day. Why do I have to? Let me challenge myself. Let me just keep it on 24, right? And then if I do need to zoom into something that's a little dangerous or a little far away, then at least I have that, right? If I can get this thing to work. Here it is. I'm looking at the wrong end. At least I have that, right? If I need to get a little close, boop, right? But I'm only going to do that once or twice, and then I go back to the 24 millimeter focal length. So just because it can limit our creativity doesn't mean it has to, right? That is here. Whether you decide that because this is full of features or this is full of features, it's going to limit my creativity, you've just made that rule up for yourself. And let me tell you something. We human beings are amazing at making rules up for ourselves. I'm writing a LinkedIn article on this, right? When to break the rules. We have to know when to break the rules. We break the rules when it's rules that we're making ourselves, right? When it's rules that say you have to drive at this speed, that's not a rule anymore. That's a law. And they do that to protect our well-being, right? Even if we don't agree with some of those. But we follow them because they're for our safety. Rules like I don't ever eat fast food. Why? You can go buy a salad at a fast food restaurant. Just because it's fast food doesn't mean it's all bad. You have to be smart, right? And you have to be creative. So I don't know what to tell you. That's a whole nother topic, right? We're not going to get into it here. We're going to do a video on that one day, right? So right now what I'm trying to tell you is don't set these rules up in your head that say, just because I have a really cool flexible camera full of features, now my creativity is limited. Why? Why? Put it on the basic rudimentary settings and then stick with it and force your creativity to come out. And if you ever need one of the features, and you use them, right? That's the whole point of having cool little gadgets like this, right? That when we need the stuff, we have it. Now, if you feel lazy one day and you just want to put it on all automatic and let it run, that's up to you, right? I don't shoot my cameras on automatic. I don't think they've ever been on automatic, except when I'm teaching a class and I have to show people automatic. But other than that, I don't really care for automatic. I use aperture priority, shutter priority, or manual. The Canon cameras have a FV mode, which is like a flexible mode. I don't know what it really stands for. I call it a flexible mode, and it's a cool mode. And I use that a lot too, right? But I don't use automatic. But if I needed to use automatic, right? If I'm like just super hungover, or I didn't sleep at all, and I got a gig, I got something that I'm getting paid for, if it doesn't hurt me too much, maybe I'll put it in automatic and maybe not for a paid gig, right? But especially like if I'm going out for a picnic, I don't want to think, I'm having a good time. There might come a day where I put in automatic. I don't want to limit myself by saying I never use automatic. Got to get away from that. Don't use the words ever, never, always. Bad words, right? The minute you start doing that, you start limiting yourself. But at the end of the day, we're all humans. And this is what's going to end up happening between these two photographers we're talking about here, the one with the really fancy gear and the one with the basic gear. The photographer with the really fancy camera is just going to have to work less hard to get good pictures. That's it at the end of the day, right? If you have a digital camera from 10 years ago and it doesn't have all the features that a new digital camera has, and it may be a DSLR, whereas the new ones are mirrorless, there are certain things you're not going to be able to do with that DSLR. Can you take amazing pictures? Oh my God, people have taken award-winning pictures with DSLRs. They've taken award-winning pictures with film, right? Let's not even go there. So can you do it? Yes, of course, right? But the person with that mirrorless camera where it has eye tracking and animal tracking and this and that, and it's going to be able to take pictures a little more effortlessly for you, right? The other camera, you're going to have to think more, you're going to have to slow down a little bit, you're going to have to be more spot on. So in that case, it does force you to use your skills a little more. But if both photographers are equally qualified, right? Equally qualified. You give one an old camera and one a new camera, they're both going to crank out good results, phenomenal results. It's just that the one with the new camera is going to work a little easier. And we're talking about tripods, lenses, peripherals, all that stuff, right? The one with all the new gear is going to have to work simpler, easier. You take an old tripod, it doesn't have all the features that a new tripod has. It doesn't go as low, it doesn't have that little hook in the middle where you can hang your bag and keep it weighed down in case there's wind. All these cool things that tripods do now that they didn't do 10, 15 years ago, right? So can you take the picture with an old tripod? I still have an old tripod and I still use it and it works fine. But I also have a new tripod, right? And there's just days I want to take one and days I want to take another. But here's the kicker out of all this. The photographer with the old camera, the photographer with the new camera, they both go shooting together. The one with the really fancy, duped up camera is going to be expected to take better pictures. That's just it. There's no other way around it. Not only will people expect that photographer to take better pictures, the photographer himself or herself is going to expect better pictures. Let me tell you about that. When I went from my first film camera that my dad used to lend me, it was an Olympus, and they bought for me for high school graduation a Canon F1 new, the new body style. That was an amazing camera. It had shot the 1984 Olympics, I think Winter Olympics. You couldn't say anything bad about the camera. And I'm not going to tell you I went into a depression because I don't think I've ever been depressed. I get sad for a week or two at a time, and that doesn't happen very often. I have no time to dwell in anything, right, including sadness. So I don't think I've ever been depressed. Now, for those of you that have, I know depression is something serious. I'm not mocking it or taking away from it. It's an important topic. I'm just telling you personally, I don't think I've ever been depressed. The reason I'm saying this is because I was about to tell you that I went into a year-long depression and I didn't use my camera, my Canon F1 new, because my pictures weren't coming out any better than they were in my dad's old Olympus. And I couldn't tell why, right? Everybody had raving reviews of this camera, and my pictures are coming out actually worse than they were in my dad's older little meek Olympus. And I couldn't figure it out, so I put the camera away for a year. Now, I started reading, learning, and I did all that stuff and looking at other photographers. I got inspired, I got creative again, pulled out the camera a year later and started taking phenomenal pictures, right? There was some stuff I needed to learn. It was a fully manual camera, and I needed to learn to do certain things, right? So it was a little pickier, and film was pickier than digital when it came to certain things. So I just had to, you know, ramp up my skills. I had to take it easy, slow down, and I ended up learning how to use it, and I ended up taking good pictures, right? You can, we all can. But my point is that even I was expecting much better pictures with my awesome camera than when I was shooting my dad's older camera, right? We all do that. You buy a new camera today that's worth $2 or $3 grand or $4 grand or $6 grand, whatever, you're gonna expect miracles coming out of that thing, and you're gonna get sad when you don't see that happening, right? Whereas a photographer using an old little camera takes a half-assed picture, they may not be so disappointed because they're gonna go, I didn't try as hard. If I try harder, I'll get a better picture, but this camera's not as great. It doesn't focus as sharp, it doesn't focus as quick, whatever, right? So people will expect more of you with a better camera, better gear. You will expect more of yourself. And then the last thing is that your creativity may take a hit if you let it, because we all get comfortable, and then we just let our camera do the work. And that's what I'm saying. It doesn't have to be that way, right? We can put all the settings. I shoot this camera where I have my aperture set to something that I need that day. If I'm doing street photography, it's going to be f8 or f11 if it's daytime. My shutter speed is probably going to be like between 125 and 250th of a second. And then I have my exposure compensation. I set it to this little button on the corner here. And then if my picture seems a little bright, I lower it. If it seems a little dark, I raise it. That's it. I keep it really simple, right? And that's what film cameras used to do. You set the ISO, right? You set the aperture, and you can shoot it and just move one thing. Look at the meter and just move one thing. But no different, right? We can make it as simple as we want, or we can let all the bells and whistles out, and then we can spend, you know, a minute to 2 minutes looking at the settings, the lenses. Which lens am I going to use? What am I popping on my camera for this picture? Do I want it close? Do I want wide? What do I do here? And before you know it, the opportunity's gone, right? The bus sailed and moved on, and you have no picture left, right? The beautiful graffiti on the bus drove down the street. So we have to be quick. And if that's the case, you can take any camera and you can do that. So I hope this was a meaningful topic. The point of this video was just to make you realize a couple things, right? That there is such a thing as a dilemma of having great gear for some people, right? Because they consider the greater the gear, the bigger the crutch on their creativity. So that is a thing, okay? But it doesn't have to be a thing. That's it. That's the video in a nutshell, okay? It's up to you, right? I hope it's not a thing for you. Get the fanciest camera you can buy. Why not? I'm going to save up for a Leica Q3. I want one. I want one really bad. This is a beautiful street photography camera. I even thought about getting the Fuji X100V, another phenomenal street photography camera with a fixed lens. At least this one I can change the lenses out. But if I'm going to do the Fuji, I may as well just do a Leica and save up for a couple of years and buy that puppy. And then I got the best color science. I got a 60 megapixel 28 millimeter equivalent, which some people are saying it's more like a 24 millimeter. Who cares? You can crop in post. It's 60 megapixels. My point is, I want that camera because it's the best of the best, and it's a fixed lens. I can keep it really simple, and if I want to get fancy and creative, I can play with the camera, but I don't have to, okay? So think of all these things as you embark on your journey of photography, or as you continue it, right? You may be a veteran. So don't let these things sit in your head. Don't make rules for yourself that don't need to be there, right? Keep it open, keep it flexible. Other than that, we are done with this video. We didn't take a water break. I'm so thirsty. Love water, cold water. Love you guys. I will see you in the next video. Please, please, please take care of yourselves. Even if you're walking around taking pictures, watch your back, have somebody with you, right? Watch each other's back. And just stay safe. In the meantime, ciao for now.